think that I've gone mad. Despite the things you do, you're in the top 37 friends I've had. You took my last slice of pizza, you put gum in my hair, but I'll be right here by your side even if you don't want me there. Because we're friends in spite of everything you do. Because we're friends in spite of what my other friends would recommend. Yeah, we're friends from beginning to the end, and on me you can depend. Because we're friends. I'll get you with my kindness
and pummel you with cheer.
I'll knock you out with gloves of gladness.
Now smile away your sneer.
I'll be the rainbow to your shower,
the silver lining to your gray.
And in your coldest, darkest winter,
I'll be your Christmas day. Because we're friends in spite of everything you do. Because we're friends in spite of what my other friends would recommend. Yeah, we're friends, and to this friendship I will tend. We're friends, everyone will mend. Because we're friends.
Because we're friends, because we're friends. Because we're friends, because we're friends. Because we're friends, because we're friends.
So don't pretend.
Because we're friends, because we're friends.
And don't offend.
Because we're friends, because we're friends.
Cause I will commend.
Because we're friends, because we're friends.
With every email that I send.
Because we're friends, because we're
Cause
friends.
it'll pay big dividends.
Because we're friends, because we're friends.
Which is,
Because we're friends.